The coffee shop door slammed shut behind me, the bell jangling like a warning shot. I'd barely stepped inside when the manager's icy glare pinned me to the spot, his eyes sharp enough to cut through the morning fog. This wasn't just a bad day, this was personal, and I didn't know why. My name is Mia Alvarez, and I'd been coming to Brood Awakening for months, a cozy little spot tucked into a Seattle side street. It was the kind of place where the smell of roasted beans and the hum of conversation could make you forget the rain-soaked world outside. But Javier Morales, the manager, had a way of making me feel like I'd tracked mud across his pristine floors every time I walked in. His curt nods, clipped words, and that permanent frown radiated disdain, and it was always aimed at me. Today was no different. I approached the counter, my boots squeaking on the polished wood, and Javier barely looked up from the espresso machine. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice flat, like he'd already decided I was wasting his time. "Large latte. Oat milk," I said, forcing a smile. "Please." He scribbled the order on a cup, his movements sharp, and slid it to the barista without a word. No eye contact, no warmth, just cold efficiency. I retreated to my usual table by the window, where I could watch the drizzle paint the streets and pretend his attitude didn't sting. But then my brother Leo walked in. Leo, my lanky, book-obsessed little brother, who at 19 still tripped over his own feet and blushed when strangers spoke to him. He clutched a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby like it was a lifeline, his glasses fogging up from the sudden warmth of the shop. He didn't notice Javier at first, too busy shaking rain from his hoodie. But when he stepped up to the counter, something shifted. Javier's frown softened. His shoulders relaxed, and God help Mehe smiled. Not the tight, perfunctory thing he threw at customers, but a real smile, warm and unguarded, like Leo had just handed him the sun. "Hey," Javier said, his voice suddenly gentle. "What can I get you?" Leo blinked, startled, and mumbled, just a black coffee. Small." "Coming right up," Javier said, still smiling, and I swear I saw Leo's cheeks turn pink. I sat frozen, my latte untouched, watching this bizarre exchange unfold. What was happening? Why was Javier, the human equivalent of a Seattle winter, suddenly radiating warmth toward my brother? I'd always been protective of Leo. Growing up, it was just the two of us against the world our parents were gone too soon, and I'd raised him through high school, college applications, and his quiet coming out last year. He'd told me he was gay in a whisper, like he was afraid I'd stop loving him. I'd hugged him so tight he laughed and said he couldn't breathe. But now, watching Javier lean across the counter, chatting with Leo about coffee beans like they were old friends, I felt a prickle of unease. And maybe something else, curiosity. Over the next few days, I started noticing things. Leo began lingering at Brood Awakening longer than necessary, his books forgotten as he talked to Javier. Javier, who'd never given me more than a grunt, would light up when Leo walked in, offering free pastries or asking about the books he was reading. It was like they were in their own little world, and I was on the outside, watching through a window I couldn't open. One rainy afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I cornered Leo as we walked home, the city lights blurring in the downpour. "What's going on with you and Javier?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Leo's eyes widened behind his glasses. "Nothing's going on," he said too quickly, his voice high. "He's just nice." "Nice?" I snorted. "He's about as nice to me as a porcupine. But with you, he's all smiles and free muffins." "Spill it." Leo ducked his head, rain dripping from his hood. "I don't know, Mia. He's different with me. We just talk. About books, Mostly. He likes Vonnegut. I stopped walking, grabbing his arm. Leo, be careful. Okay. I don't trust him. He's got this vibe. Leo frowned, pulling away. You don't trust anyone. Mia? Maybe he's just being friendly. Friendly. Right. But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Javier's sudden warmth, and I wasn't sure if it was a spark of something good or a warning I should have heeded. The rain didn't let up for days, and neither did my suspicion. Every time Leo and I went to Brood Awakening, Javier's cold demeanor toward me clashed with the way he lit up for Leo. It was like watching a storm cloud part just for him, and it drove me up the wall. I started paying closer attention. Javier wasn't just the manager. He was the heart of the shop. He knew every regular's order, bantered with the older folks about the weather, and even sketched little doodles on to-go cups when he thought no one was watching. But with me, it was always the same, clipped words, tight lips, like I'd personally offended him in a past life. I tried to brush it off, but it stung more than I'd admit. I wasn't here to make friends, but I didn't understand why I was his personal punching bag. Meanwhile, Leo was falling into a rhythm with Javier. I'd catch them laughing over some obscure book reference, or Javier would slide a free scone across the counter with a wink that made Leo blush to his ears. My brother, who'd always been shy to the point of invisibility, was opening up, and I didn't know how to feel about it. Part of me was thrilled to see him smile so easily. The other part, the part that had bandaged his scraped knees and stayed up late helping him with college essays, wanted to grab him and run. One evening, I stayed late at the shop, pretending to work on my laptop while Leo lingered at the counter. The place was nearly empty, the soft jazz playlist mingling with the hiss of the espresso machine. Javier was wiping down the counter, his sleeves rolled up, revealing a tattoo of a compass on his forearm. He caught Leo's eye and said, "You ever read Slaughterhouse-Five? It's messed up, but it's kind of perfect." Leo's face lit up. "Yeah, I read it last year." The time travel stuff blew my mind. They launched into a discussion about Vonnegut's absurdity, and I felt like an intruder in my own brother's world. But then Javier's eyes flicked to me, and the warmth vanished. He straightened, his jaw tight, and went back to cleaning. I closed my laptop with a snap, louder than I meant to, and Leo glanced over, startled. "Mia, you okay?" he asked. "Fine," I said, too sharp. "Just ready to go?" Leo hesitated, then nodded, grabbing his book. As we left, Javier called after him, "Hey, Leo, come back tomorrow. Got a new blend you might like." Leo grinned, and I felt that prickle again, part protectiveness, part something I couldn't name. On the walk home, I tried to probe again. "Leo, what's the deal with you two? You're there every day now." He shrugged, his breath fogging in the chilly air. "He's cool, Mia. He gets me. Not everyone does." I wanted to argue, to point out that Javier was a mystery, that his coldness toward me was a red flag. But Leo's voice had a quiet certainty I hadn't heard before, and it stopped me cold. He was growing up, finding his own path, and I wasn't sure I could keep up. The next day, I went to Brood Awakening alone. Leo had a study group, and I told myself I was just there for coffee. But really, I wanted answers. The shop was quiet, the morning rush over. Javier was behind the counter, his usual scowl in place when he saw me. "Latte, oat milk?" he asked, already reaching for a cup. "Yeah," I said, then took a breath. "Look, Javier, what's your problem with me?" He froze, his hand hovering over the espresso machine. For a second, I thought he'd ignore me, but then he turned, his dark eyes narrowing. I don't have a problem, he said, but his tone was guarded, like he was hiding something. Bullshit, I said, crossing my arms. You're all sunshine with Leo, but you treat me like I kicked your dog. Why? He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something flicker in his expression. Guilt. Maybe. Or fear. It's not about you, he said finally, his voice low. It's complicated. Then uncomplicated, I snapped. Because Leo's my brother, and I need to know what's going on. Javier set the cup down, his hands gripping the counter. You want the truth? Fine. I'm trying to keep my distance because I know you're watching me like a hawk. And maybe I don't want you to see too much. I blinked. Thrown. See what? He didn't answer, just turned back to the machine. But the air between us crackled with something new. I left with my coffee and more questions than ever, wondering what Javier was hiding and why it felt like it could change everything. Javier's cryptic words haunted me for days. See too much? What did that even mean? I started watching him closer, not just for Leo's sake, but because I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a story behind his guarded eyes, one he didn't want me to unravel. Brood Awakening became my unofficial stakeout spot. I'd sit with my laptop, pretending to work on freelance graphic design projects. But really, I was studying Javier. The way he moved, deliberate, almost graceful, like he'd learned to take up as little space as possible. The way he'd linger when talking to Leo, his voice softening, his hands fidgeting with a rag or a pen. And the way he'd stiffen when I caught his eye, like he was bracing for a fight. Leo, oblivious to my detective work, was falling deeper into whatever this was. He'd started dressing better, not his usual thrift store hoodies, but button-ups and jeans that actually fit. He'd linger at the shop even when I wasn't there, texting me later with stories about Javier's book recommendations or how he'd taught him to pull a perfect espresso shot. It was sweet, and it terrified me. Leo was so open, so trusting, and I didn't know if Javier deserved that. One Saturday, the shop was packed, the air thick with the scent of cinnamon and coffee. I was at my usual table when I overheard a conversation that stopped me cold. Two baristas, wiping down tables nearby, were whispering. You see how Javier is with that kid? One said, nodding toward Leo, who was laughing at something Javier said at the counter. Never seen him like that. Yeah, the other replied, smirking. Bet he's got a crush. Too bad his family's a mess. I froze, my pen hovering over my notebook. Family. Did they mean Leo's family, our family? Or Javier's? I strained to hear more, but they moved out of earshot. My stomach churned. I didn't know what they meant, but it felt like a puzzle piece I didn't want to fit. That evening, I waited until the shop was closing to confront Javier again. Leo had left early for a group project, and the place was empty except for Javier, who was stacking chairs. I marched up, my heart pounding. We need to talk. He didn't look surprised, just tired. About what? Mia? About you. And Leo. And whatever you're not telling me. I kept my voice low, but it trembled with frustration. I heard your baristas talking. Something about your family being a mess. If there's something I need to know, tell me now. Javier's face hardened, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of pain. He set a chair down with a thud. You don't know anything about my family, he said, his voice sharp. And you don't need to. This isn't about you. It's about Leo, I shot back. He's my brother, and I'm not letting you hurt him. Hurt him? Javier's laugh was bitter, and he ran a hand through his hair, revealing a scar above his eyebrow I hadn't noticed before. You think I'd hurt him? You have no idea what I'm trying to protect him from. Protect him from what? I demanded, stepping closer. You keep dodging. Javier. If you care about him, stop hiding. For a moment, he looked like he might snap back, but then his shoulders sagged. He leaned against the counter, his voice barely above a whisper. My family, they're not like yours, Mia. They don't accept certain things. Certain people. The words hung heavy between us. I didn't need him to spell it out. I'd seen that kind of rejection before, in the way Leo's high school friends had drifted away after he came out, in the whispers at family gatherings from distant relatives. But hearing it from Javier, seeing the raw edge in his eyes, hit differently. Are you saying you're not out? I asked, softer now. He didn't answer, just looked away, his jaw tight. The silence was louder than any confession. I wanted to push, to demand more, but something in his expression stopped me. He wasn't just cold, I was scared. I left the shop that night with a knot in my chest. Javier wasn't the enemy I'd thought, but he was still a mystery. And Leo, my sweet, trusting brother, was caught in the middle of a story I didn't fully understand. All I knew was that I had to protect him, even if it meant protecting him from someone who might already love him. The days blurred into a tense routine. I kept going to Brood Awakening, watching Leo and Javier orbit each other like stars afraid to collide. Leo was happier than I'd ever seen him, his shy smiles blooming into full grins whenever Javier was around. But Javier's confessioner lacked thereof gnawed at me. He was hiding something big, and I couldn't shake the fear that it would hurt my brother. I started digging. Subtly, I thought, but I wasn't as sneaky as I hoped. I asked the other baristas casual questions about Javier, how long he'd worked there, where he was from. Most were tight-lipped, loyal to their boss. But one, a chatty girl named Tara, let slip that Javier had moved to Seattle 3 years ago, running from something, I think. She clammed up when she realized I was fishing, but it was enough to fuel my unease. One night, I found Leo in his room, sprawled on his bed with cat's cradle open, a dreamy look on his face. Mia, he said, not looking up, did you know Javier writes poetry? Like, really good stuff. He showed me some yesterday. Poetry. The guy who could barely muster a civil word for me was writing sonnets. Leo, I said, sitting on the edge of his bed, what do you know about him? Like, really no. He frowned, closing the book. What's with the 3rd degree? He's from Chicago. He loves books. And he's kind. Why do you hate him so much? I don't hate him, I said, though the words felt half true. I worry. You're getting close to him, and he's not exactly an open book. Leo sat up, his expression stubborn. You don't get it, Mia. He sees me. Not just the quiet kid with glasses. Me. And I like who I am when I'm with him. His words hit like a punch. I'd spent years shielding Leo, but had I ever really seen him the way Javier did? I swallowed hard, nodding. Just be careful, okay? Promise me. He rolled his eyes but nodded. Promise. The next day, I caught Javier alone at the shop, restocking coffee beans. The morning rush was over, and the place was quiet, just the hum of the fridge and the patter of rain outside. I took a deep breath and approached. Javier, we need to talk. Again. He sighed, setting a bag of beans down. What now, Mia? I know you're not out, I said, keeping my voice low. And I get that it's your business. But Leo's falling for you. And if you're not ready to be honest with him, with yourself, you're going to break his heart. Javier's face went pale, his hands clenching at his sides. You think I don't know that? He hissed. You think I'm just playing with him? I'm trying. Mia? I'm trying to figure this out. Figure what out? I pressed. If you care about him, tell him the truth. All of it. He looked away, his jaw working. When he spoke, his voice was raw. My family, they're old school. Catholic. Traditional. When I was 17, they caught me with a guy. Kicked me out. I've been on my own since. My breath caught. I'd expected something heavy, but not this. Javier, I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. But Leo deserves to know. He's not just some guy you can flirt with and walk away from. I know, he said, his voice breaking. I'm not walking away. I don't know how to do this without losing everything again. The vulnerability in his eyes disarmed me. For the first time, I saw the weight he carried, the fear behind his cold exterior. I wanted to hate him, to keep him as the villain in my story, but he was just as human as Leo, maybe more broken. That night, I watched Leo and Javier from my corner table. Javier handed Leo a coffee with a shy smile, and Leo's laugh echoed through the shop. They were beautiful together, fragile and real, and I realized I couldn't protect Leo from this. Love was a risk, and he was already all in. Javier's story changed everything. I couldn't unsee the pain in his eyes, the way he'd bared a piece of himself he'd kept hidden. But it didn't erase my worry. If anything, it made it worse. Leo was falling hard, and Javier was a tightrope walker with no net. I tried to give them space, but it was hard. Leo was spending every free moment at Brood Awakening, and I'd catch glimpses of them, Javier teaching Leo how to steam milk, their hands brushing, or Leo reading aloud from a book while Javier listened, enraptured. It was sweet, but it felt like watching a storm brew on the horizon. One chilly evening, I walked into the shop and found them sitting together at a corner table, heads bent close over a notebook. Javier was showing Leo a poem, his voice low and hesitant. Leo's eyes were wide, his smile soft, and I felt like I was intruding on something sacred. I grabbed my coffee and left without saying a word, my heart a tangled mess of pride and fear. At home, I tried talking to Leo again. You really like him, don't you? I asked, keeping my tone gentle. He nodded, his cheeks flushing. Yeah, I do. He's different, Mia. He's been through a lot, but he's still kind. I think I love him. The word love hit like a thunderclap. I'd known it was coming, but hearing it out loud made it real. Does he feel the same? I asked, my voice barely steady. I think so, Leo said, his eyes bright. He hasn't said it, but the way he looks at me, Mia, it's like I'm the only person in the room. I wanted to warn him again, to tell him to slow down, but I couldn't. He was glowing, and I hadn't seen him this alive in years. So I hugged him and said, just be you, Leo. That's enough. The next day, I went to the shop early, hoping to catch Javier alone. He was sweeping the floor, the morning light catching the scar on his brow. Javier, I said, and he looked up, wary. What now? He asked, but there was no venom in it, just exhaustion. I know about your family, I said, and I get why you're scared. But Leo's in love with you. If you're not ready for that, you need to tell him now. Javier leaned on the broom, his eyes searching mine. I'm not scared of him, he said. I'm scared of me. Of screwing this up. He's good, Mia. Better than I deserve. Then be honest with him, I said. He's stronger than you think. Javier nodded, his expression unreadable. I'm trying, he said, and I believed him. That night, Leo came home late, his eyes red but his smile wide. Javier told me everything, he said, sitting on the couch. About his family, how they kicked him out. He said he's never felt safe with anyone before me. I sat beside him, my heart aching. And you? How do you feel? Scared, he admitted, laughing softly. But happy. He wants to try? Mia? Really try. I hugged him, tears pricking my eyes. For the first time, I let myself hope that Javier might be what Leo needed, not a threat, but a chance at something real. But hope is a fragile thing. A week later, I walked into Brood Awakening and saw a man at the counter, his posture rigid, his voice sharp as he spoke to Javier. Javier's face was pale, his hands shaking as he poured a coffee. The man looked like an older version of him, same dark eyes, same sharp jaw. His father. The air in the shop felt electric, dangerous. I didn't know what was coming, but I knew it could break everything Leo and Javier had built. And I wasn't sure I could stop it. The man's presence in Brood Awakening was like a crack in the foundation of the shop's warmth. I stood frozen by the door, watching Javier's every move, his hands unsteady, his eyes darting between the counter and the man who had to be his father. The air was thick with unspoken history, and I knew I was witnessing something private, something painful. Leo wasn't there. Thank God. He'd stayed home to finish a paper, but I texted him to stay away until I figured out what was happening. I slid into a booth, pretending to scroll on my phone, but my ears were tuned to the low, tense exchange at the counter. You can't keep running, Javier, the man said, his voice clipped, authoritative. You owe us. You owe me. I don't owe you anything, Javier shot back, his voice low but fierce. You made that clear when you threw me out. The man leaned closer, his words too quiet for me to catch, but Javier's face told me everything. He looked like a kid again, small and scared, and it twisted something inside me. I'd spent weeks resenting him, but now I saw the boy who'd lost everything for being himself. The man left abruptly, slamming the door behind him. Javier stood there, gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I hesitated, then walked over. You okay? I asked, my voice softer than I'd meant. He flinched, then nodded, not meeting my eyes. Yeah. Just family stuff. Javier, I said, if that was your dad, and he's trouble, you need to tell Leo. He deserves to know. I know, he said, his voice hoarse. I didn't think he'd find me. The weight of that hit me. Javier hadn't just left Chicago. He'd been hiding. From his family, from his past, maybe from himself. I wanted to push, to demand more, but the bell above the door jingled, and Leo walked in. His smile faded when he saw Javier's face. What's wrong? He asked, rushing over. Javier hesitated, then took Leo's hand, pulling him toward the back room. I stayed at the counter, my heart pounding. I couldn't hear their conversation, but when they came back, Leo's eyes were wide, his hand still in Javier's. Mia, he said. Javier's dad showed up. He's not happy about us. Us. I echoed, my stomach dropping. You told him. Javier nodded, his jaw tight. He tracked me down. Saw us together last week. He's not. He doesn't accept this. Me. Leo squeezed his hand, his voice steady. I don't care what he thinks. I'm not going anywhere. I wanted to believe it was that simple, but the fear in Javier's eyes told me it wasn't. Over the next few days, the shop felt different, tenser. like a storm was brewing. Javier was jumpier, glancing at the door every time the bell rang. Leo stayed close, trying to keep things light, but I could see the strain. Then, one night, it all came crashing down. I was closing up with Javier asked me to help so Leo could study when his father stormed in. "You think you can just live like this?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the empty shop. "Disgracing us." Javier froze, his face pale. I stepped forward, my voice shaking. "You need to leave." The man ignored me, advancing on Javier. "You're coming home. You're going to fix this." "No," Javier said, his voice breaking but firm. "I'm not your son anymore. I'm me. And I love him." The words hung in the air, raw and real. His father's face twisted, and for a moment, I thought he'd lash out. But he just turned and left, the door slamming behind him. Javier sank to the floor, his breath ragged. I knelt beside him, unsure what to say. "You meant that," I said finally. "About Leo?" He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I do. I love him, Mia. And I'm done hiding." The aftermath of Javier's father's visit left the shop quieter, but not in the way I'd feared. It was a different kind of quiet hopeful, like the calm after a storm. Javier was different too. He still snapped at me sometimes, but there was a new openness in his eyes, like he'd shed a weight he'd carried for years. Leo was his anchor. They spent every moment they could together, stealing kisses behind the counter, laughing over shared books. I watched them, my protectiveness softening into something like pride. Leo had found someone who saw him, who loved him for exactly who he was. And Javier, for all his rough edges, was trying to be that person. I started to see Javier differently too. He wasn't just the cold manager anymore. He was the guy who'd fought to build a life after being cast out, who'd found a home in this little coffee shop and, somehow, in my brother. One evening, as we closed up together, I caught him sketching on a napkin a portrait of Leo, all soft lines and shy smiles. "You're good," I said, surprised. He shrugged, a faint blush on his cheeks. "It's just for me. Helps me think." "You love him," I said, not a question. He met my eyes. "Steady." "Yeah. More than I thought I could." I nodded, a lump in my throat. "Just keep being good to him. Okay?" "I will," he said, and I believed him. Months passed, and Brood Awakening became our family's second home. Javier and Leo grew stronger, their love quiet but unshakable. Javier's father didn't come back, but the threat of him lingered, a shadow they faced together. I stopped watching Javier like a hawk, trusting him to be what Leo needed. One spring evening, the shop hosted an open mic night. Leo, nervous but determined, read a poem he'd written for Javier, words about finding light in unexpected places, about love that felt like home. Javier sat in the front row, his eyes shining, and when Leo finished, he stood and pulled him into a kiss that made the whole room cheer. I clapped too, tears streaming down my face. For so long, I'd thought protecting Leo meant keeping him safe from the world. But watching him with Javier, I realized love wasn't about safety, it was about courage, about choosing someone even when it scared you. As the crowd dispersed, Javier caught my eye and gave me a small nod, a silent thank you. I nodded back, my heart full. He wasn't perfect, and neither was Leo, but they were perfect for each other. And in that little coffee shop, amid the scent of coffee and the hum of life, love had quietly bloomed, stronger than any storm.